Today's reading is Luke chapter 1, reading verses 26 to 38. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's exciting to be starting a new series. I am playing Christmas music in my house. I don't know about you guys. I'm ready. Can I just stand here for a moment with that behind me? An extraordinary mum. I'm only sad that my children have gone out to their groups. Thank you. Thank you. Tell my children. That's great. I didn't think about that. Okay. Well, let's acknowledge at the start that talking about the subject of mums and mothers, it can be complicated for some of us. Some of us have excellent mothers, including my children, shall we say that now? But some of us have more complicated relationships with our mums. Some of us really miss our mums, and some of us never knew our mums. Some of us feel that the very reason we have been placed on the earth is to fulfill the role of mother. And some of us, in fulfilling that role, feel that it might actually break us. It feels like it's stretching us beyond what we're able to do. Some of us are longing to become mothers. So it's not an easy subject, and I don't want to tackle it glibly. But as we approach this week looking at Mary, an extraordinary mother, this is not going to be like 10 hacks on how to be a great mum like Mary. Because frankly, Mary was a human, and she wasn't perfect. But in this passage today, we see her humanity and we see her grow in her understanding. And so we're going to try and learn from Mary, the human, today and see what lessons she can teach us about our humanness and how we relate to God and his divineness, his divinity. Mary speaks at 3 points in this passage. We're going to use her words as hooks to navigate our way through the text. She starts by being troubled in verse 29. They're all listed there on the screen for you. And she moves on to questioning in verse 34. And then she accepts, finally. She submits in verse 38. And as journeys of faith go, I think it's probably quite a realistic template that we can learn from. We might find matters of faith quite troubling, and so we then question before we ever go on to accepting matters of faith. What we're going to do this morning is we're going to start at the end, where she submits She says she is the Lord's servant, but we're going to look back then and figure, how did she actually land there? How did she get there? And so my 3 headings this morning, they seem really random. I quite like to have headings that like rhyme or that start with the same letter. I've not done that this morning. If you're familiar with the website, What 3 Words? Do you know this? Can I see nods? Yes. So What 3 Words is this navigation tool that every 3 meters on the face of the planet have been allocated 3 letters. And people use it, which is a very accurate way of finding places on the globe. And my words felt so random this morning that it felt like a location of What 3 Words. So our headings are servant, troubled, and questioning. And I got quite excited from those 3 words. I thought, that's the 3 words I'm going to use. Wouldn't that be exciting if that ended up being like Bethlehem? And it's not. It's somewhere in like rural northern Russia. So it was going to be great, but those are our 3 words. They're not memorable at all, but we're going to go with them. Servant, trouble, and questioning. But before we do that, a little bit of context about Mary. Maybe you're really familiar with the Christmas story. Maybe you've heard about Mary many, many years in a row. But just to remind ourselves, Mary is just an ordinary girl, and she is a girl. She's a young teenager, and it was very normal in these days and in this culture to become engaged. Engagement was a really serious commitment, so she was engaged to Joseph, and then this angel visits her out of nowhere, and he brings her these glad tidings that she is going to have a baby. Having never actually slept with anyone, never mind Joseph. So she is a young virgin. And with this news that she's about to become a mum outside wedlock, she's probably about to be disgraced amongst her community. The child that she's going to give birth to will also be disgraced. He might be shunned by the community, not even to think of what her fiancé, Joseph, is going to say about it all. So that's why our first point, servant, is the thing that makes Mary quite extraordinary, because she submits. She says, I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Now, servants, they're not really part of our modern culture, but if you were a servant, you would have no autonomy. If your master said, work harder today, work a different way tomorrow, can you change the task that you do the next day? You would just have to agree with all of those different commands. You would have no autonomy to choose. In my household, there are some days I feel like a servant. I'm sure many of you can relate. One day a chauffeur, a cook, an agony aunt, a PA, the list could go on and on. But as much as I'm doing things for other people, deep down, if I'm really honest, I actually quite like doing that. I get quite a bit of satisfaction because I like to think that I'm in charge and that I am the key person and that they all revolve around me. I'm running the show and I'm keeping the train on the tracks. Any successes we have as a family is probably orchestrated by me in the background. It's what I like to think. That's not really the case. But mums, we can like to think, like to pretend that we're in control. We make sure the changing bag is always stocked with nappies. We make sure the wet towels are removed from the swim bag. We navigate the many WhatsApp groups and organise lifts here, there and everywhere to the different birthday parties. We're on it with the teacher's Christmas gift. We sort out how to do fancy hair braids. We're learning that on YouTube. We even figure out what a skin fade is, and we try and understand what Minecraft is all about. And dads, are you getting annoyed at me? Because I'm making it sound like mums are like the superheroes. And of course, that's not the case, because parenting, it's a shared role. And if you're not a parent, lots of you will be performing these types of roles for your flatmates, your friends, maybe your work colleagues, or your parents. My point is that this role of mum, where we think that we are in charge of some things and that things revolve around us, we keep the plates spinning. That's quite a normal role. We quite like it. And yet here is Mary saying, okay, I'm your servant, Lord. Do whatever, and I'm going to be happy to go along with it. She's saying, really, I don't need to be in control. She's submitting to God. She doesn't need all the answers before she does this. She's saying she's not the center of the universe. And that's not a typical mum attitude. So is she like super chilled out by nature? Well, I don't think so. We're going to go back and have a look at how she landed at this place of acceptance. Because I think we'll see there was a bit of processing for Mary to be able to come to this conclusion. And that's where it takes us to the second point, troubled. We read that Mary was highly favored and that the Lord was with her. We see that in verse 28. Highly favored. Isn't that amazing? Have you ever been highly favored? Wouldn't it be nice to be highly favored? Surely that's like when you win Employee of the Month or something like that. But rather than finding this really exciting, rather than thinking it was a good thing that she's been chosen, Mary's response is that she's troubled. The text says that Mary was troubled at the angel's words. In verse 29, we see that. And that word troubled, the Greek literally means to be thoroughly disturbed or agitated. Mary is highly favored, and the Lord is with her. Why is that disturbing? Is it because she's seeing angels? Because you would think that would be quite disturbing. Well, no, the text is really clear that she was troubled not at the angel's presence, but at his words. It's the words that troubled her. And so you think, okay, well, is it because the angel is telling her that she's going to have a baby and she's not yet married to Joseph? So that's surely what's troubling her. But again, no, because at this point when she's troubled, she doesn't even know she's pregnant yet. She doesn't know that she's about to be told she's going to have a baby. She won't know about the baby until verse 35. The theologian Paula Gooder says that being favored by God should trouble a person. Because in the Bible, with great favor comes great responsibility. You're all thinking of that Spider-Man quote. And it can be true, with great favor comes great responsibility. Think of like the sports person or the sports team who have great favor. They've maybe got a great track record. So going into the next championship or the next tournament, there's such pressure on them that they're going to win. And they might struggle to meet the expectations that have been put on them. Or maybe a musician who comes up with a really great number one hit, and then they really struggle with the rate of expectation that they're going to produce another hit after that. Or maybe a favored candidate in an election who then wins, and then they actually have to deliver all of the election promises. We're putting pressure on them to deliver. And I wonder if this news of great favor was troubling to Mary because it's disruptive. Paula Gooder also says that being favored by God means that your life is about to be turned on its head. Turned on its head. When our children were smaller, and we would sometimes give them the choice, would you like mummy to read you a story, or would you like daddy to read you a story? And if they chose me, I'd be highly favored. And for a couple of minutes, I would feel quite smug. And my husband would actually feel smugger, because for the next 20 minutes, my time would be disrupted. I had to put down what I was doing, and I had to read the book, whereas he could carry on doing whatever it was that he was doing. Being highly favored is disruptive. And the same is true of that example of politicians, the people that we elect. They are highly favored, we voted for them, and now their life is completely disrupted. For a prime minister, for example, they now need security. They now need to live in a special house. They have to go and represent us here, there, and everywhere, whether they want to or not. And they're under constant public scrutiny. Their life is not their own. Being highly favored is disruptive. And so have we been troubled by the good news of Jesus' arrival? Have we realized its magnitude? The arrival of Jesus as a baby is disruptive. It was disruptive for Mary, and if we read through the Gospels, we see that it was disruptive for the places and for the people that Jesus encounters. And it's disruptive for us today. because it interrupts any plans that we have put in place. All of these dreams that we have, it can disrupt them. As Paula Gooder says, your life will be turned on its head. Why is that? It's because Jesus changes everything. The other part of the angel's greeting, not only was Mary favored, but the Lord was with her. It says she was highly favored, and the Lord was with Mary. We're in verse 28 there. The Lord was with Mary, meaning Mary has a Lord. So stick with me, because surely by now you're questioning. Mary certainly was. How will this be? She asks in verse 34. How will this be? Mary's curious. She's open to learning, and in many ways, this is the start of her journey to being a disciple. And as we learn more about Jesus, we can grow in our love of him, and we can learn how to live as his followers, as his disciples. We're always learning more. As a team, a ministry team this past week, we had some training from a woman called Ruth Perrin. If you're a mentor, you might have had some training from Ruth Perrin as well this week. And she does many things, but one of the things she does is she studies how people who are millennials or Gen Z, how they are coming to faith, how they feel about the church and the gospel. And one of her findings is that in our society today, younger people are really open to learning about Jesus. They are really curious. They're asking questions. So they're open to reading the Bible. They're open to having spiritual encounters. And we're seeing in this church as well, people are accepting Jesus into their lives with very little background knowledge. And they're hungry to learn. And maybe you've heard people talk about the quiet revival. If you don't know what a revival is really describing when we see God moving in a particular place at a particular time. So that could look like lots of people becoming Christians in a particular place, or it could look like God doing something new and fresh with the church in a particular place. And so we are seeing what's being called a quiet revival happening across the Western world in these days. And it's being called quiet because it doesn't look like hordes of people descending on churches week by week. But it is very normal for churches to have a handful of people each week who have never been to church before and who are keen to explore. And some people are calling it a quiet revival of curiosity, because people are wanting to know more. They're wanting to learn. They're curious. And this is the first step, and it's where Mary begins. But being a Christian, being a disciple of Jesus, it's not just about being curious. Curiosity is the beginning of discipleship. And by discipleship, I mean living with, living for Jesus. And if we're living for Jesus, we are disciples. We are, like Mary, saying that Jesus is Lord. And what does that mean? Well, if you come to our house, we have a tap, our kitchen tap. Occasionally, it doesn't just drip, it actually runs on its own. It's more of a trickle. And people will often go, oh, what was that? Your tap's going on its own. And this is because when we had our kitchen fitted a few years ago, we hadn't quite budgeted for the lighting and the appliances. So by the time it came to buying the tap, which was the last thing we bought for our kitchen, we had a kitchen brochure open, I remember one evening, and there were lots of taps there, and there was a tap that was £400, and there was a tap that was £40, and they looked absolutely identical to the untrained eye. Let me tell you, do not buy a £40 tap for your kitchen. It will trickle. And I feel very seen by this passage later on in the Gospel of Luke. We find it in Luke 14. And Jesus is talking to his disciples about what it means to follow him. I'll read it for us now. He says this: "Whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower or a kitchen. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation, install the units, are not able to finish it, fit the tap, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Before you build a tower, you will estimate the cost of it to ensure that you can complete it. If you start the job and can't finish it, people will laugh at you, just like they laugh at us for our kitchen tap. We failed to count the cost. The gospel is troubling because it tells us that God gave his everything for us. He sent his son, Jesus, into the world. And what does he ask for in return? Well, this is the troubling bit, because he asks us for literally everything. Again, in Luke 14, in verse 33, it says, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Following Christ is costly, and Mary was realizing that. And we so often talk about the joy and the peace of Jesus, and these are true, and they are lovely things to experience and dwell on, and certainly to plaster on our Christmas cards and Christmas jumpers. Is Mary joyful here? Do you see Mary experiencing joy here? I don't think we do. Not yet. Mary's joy comes after she has counted the cost. After she submitted her life, her plans, her dreams over to God. And then, my goodness, then she knows joy. If you've never read Mary's song, it begins in the same chapter we're in, chapter 1, it begins in verse 46. If you haven't read it before, go away and read it this afternoon, because Mary here is bursting with joy. And the great thing about Mary's joy in this song is that it's not about her. Mary's joy in her song, in the Magnificat it's called, it's rooted in God, in who he is, in what he's done. And once Mary has come under his lordship, she can see beyond her own hardship, beyond her own trials. She's been given a brand new perspective. I want to tell you about a man. I'll say his name is Jim. Actually, because that is his name. His name is Jim. His name was Jim, and he was an old man. He'd been widowed twice, and he was increasingly frail. He went to a church that we went to in the past. And when you asked Jim, how are you today, Jim? His answer was always the same. Jim would say, I'm much blessed. I'm much blessed. And he was in pain, and he was experiencing decline, and he had known real heartache, and still he was much blessed. Jim knew the joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord was his strength and his song. He had a deep joy because he knew Jesus as Lord, and he had been given a new perspective. His joy was deeper than the superficial joy that we often look for at this time of year. So let's come back to land on these three random words that sum up Mary, an extraordinary mother. Servant, troubled, questioning. Realizing that we have a Lord is troubling, because we like to be in charge of our destiny. We like to be in control. And Mary is able to say she is the Lord's servant because she's been highly favored. The Lord has put a call on her life. And we know that the plan God has for Mary's life will be full of challenge. We know the story. We know how it goes. There are times that Mary will act like a thoroughly ordinary mother over the years to come. As her baby son grows up, there are times that he is a complete mystery to her. She doesn't always understand what Jesus is doing. And then one day, Mary is going to have to watch her son be crucified. Mary was a very ordinary mother, but under the lordship of Christ is when the extraordinary happened. The arrival of Jesus as an infant was troubling for Mary, and it made her question, because it's disruptive. And it's the same for us. But extraordinary things happened when Mary came under the lordship of Christ. And that's when the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Dave.